Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Chris Lynam. Business has lost over $100 billion in recent years, and that was all before the pandemic. Why? Bad customer service. Chris Lynam is an author, speaker, and business owner with a unique perspective that could dramatically change any business through high-touch service, even in a touch-free world. Chris's book is called The Choreography of Customer Service, High-Touch Service in a Touch-Free World. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, Chris Lynam.
Thanks so much, Ed. I'm so happy to be here. Well,
first off, Chris, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, I am the owner with my wife of 7 Arthur Murray dance studio locations, and so we're franchisees. And I am a second-generation small business owner. Never thought I could say that, but I have seen kind of firsthand what it's like to build a business from, inside of your own home. My mom has a music school, and I was one of her first employees, folding flyers and mailing things out when I was 12 years old, and worked up to become a music teacher, teaching out of our garage next to the laundry. It was just, to see that, it just seemed so normal at the time, and yet I look back on that and I realize how unique that was. And I've seen what the struggle is like for my mom as she built her business as a small business owner, and then my wife and I have had a chance to experience something very similar at Arthur Murray, and so my heart, I have a heart for small business owners, and because I am one, but also because it's so entrenched in my family, and so I love making an impact where maybe an impact wasn't there before. And I look back in times where if I just could go back in time and help my mom maybe as a younger kid or something, knowing what I know now. And I've actually had a chance to do some consulting with my mom's business, which was very weird. But I just think that, I think every small business has the adaptability to be able to make like that little impact. And so to do that with our staff, and then eventually to do that with our clients, is great, but also to do that on a bigger scale with other business owners is always, such a delight for me.
And tell me a little bit more about your book, The Choreography of Customer Service, High-Touch Service in a Touch-Free World. And there's an interesting Venn diagram there of choreography and customer service. But when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as somebody, I think you can compare so many things when it comes to communication and customer service. I think, you could look at so many different fun parallels. I think about times where I was really shy and uncomfortable when it came to like talking to girls in high school. I never could kind of pull the trigger. And I think about times where, if I had maybe just an opener or something that I could use as a way to kind of engage in conversation, how much cooler I would have been way back then. And I look back at my first year as a dance teacher, and it's the same thing. And so, when I was coming up with the concept of this book, it really originated because our studios, we expanded from 1 to 3 studios in the same year. And one was planned and another one was sort of like a bonus, kind of like when people don't know that they're going to have twins. And so we went from 1 school to 3 schools, and we needed to do something that could kind of integrate and kind of cross-pollinate consistently across all of our locations, like the same type of training. And so what we did was we made this, I came up with this system that is actually outlined in the book. And what it really does is it just kind of revolves around these like 5 basic pillars of how to talk to your clients. And I think too many times someone can do all of the right things based on their job description, and yet they can lose the sale, they can lose the client, they don't make the impact that is going to keep somebody and make them feel like they're in great hands. And so because we couldn't physically be in all 3 of our locations simultaneously, we needed something to streamline the whole training process. And so that was really the origins of the book. And then the book is really about, what would be a training manual and a fun read at the same time for a small business owner that didn't know kind of where to start with customer service and how can you go beyond just finding someone who is really nice, and I think that being nice in customer service is great, but it's kind of like being tall for basketball. And there's some people that are tall, but they don't play basketball. And so it's a great place to start, but it's not the end all. And that's where I feel like I wanted this book to kind of be an extension for that, to kind of add a little more context and to equip, managers and owners and franchisees with something that they could use for their frontline employees to have a consistent level of high touch service.
Yes, because going back to your kid analogy, once you get to the third kid, you've got to play a zone defense. So that you had to do the same thing with your business, right? You had to effectively play a zone because you and your wife couldn't be at the third location. Not possible.
Ed, we are now have just become best friends because you're connecting with me on multiple levels. But for sure, yeah, that's the thing. I remember, I'm speaking about kids for a second, but we were on vacation in Salt Lake City, and a lady saw us, and we had 3 kids at the time. And she just leaned over. She saw that we were struggling. You could tell she was a parent. And she just said, if you can have 3, you can have 11. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we have 5 now. But it's true. Like once you are outnumbered, you have to find a way to, how can you replicate something and make it consistent? And the really great thing is that when we went from 1 location to 3 that one year in 2008, it also helped us determine like what was really the issue. If we had an issue with the content, or I would always blame the content is what I should say, when we had 1 location, and I would constantly change the content. And what I didn't realize was it was just the execution. And so by streamlining the training process and training the same thing in 3 locations, we could then see that it wasn't a content issue, it was just an execution issue. And so that's, I think, a big advantage. And like with anything, with parenting or the basketball team or anything, is that, if you have a rock solid playbook, then it's not always changing the playbook, but sometimes it's just changing the way that you execute the playbook is really the differentiator.
And Chris, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero? That's a tough question, but I think my hero, there was a man who was working for Arthur Murray for over 60 years. His name is Jack DeBev. He passed away in 2020. And I really believe that if I hadn't run into this guy, then I wouldn't be here today. I probably wouldn't have met my wife. And I definitely wouldn't be a business owner. And Jack watched me teach. This guy had been in the Arthur Murray organization for such a long time, but he watched me teach a class. And at the time, I was planning on leaving the company after the summer and going to film school. And he watched me teach, and I could see him kind of watching me from a distance. And he came up to me and he said, "Kid, you teach a hell of a group class, but you kind of like the swing, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love the swing. It's my favorite dance." And he said, "Next time I'm here, don't ever be known as the swing guy." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "I want you to be the waltz guy." And so every time this guy showed up, he gave me some little challenge, and he would make me a little uncomfortable. And so next time he came, I worked really hard. And then he came up to me and he said, "Hey, waltz guy, how you doing?" And bit by bit, this guy continued to extract me from this kind of bubble that I was in. And then eventually what he told us was that it's time to give yourself a promotion. And he challenged my wife and I to become business owners. And I attribute so much of what I've learned to the training that he gave me on communication and just leadership and customer service. And so he's always somebody that I hold near and dear to my heart. And lastly, Chris, how can somebody contact you?
Yeah, so right now there's a website that's in development. It's Chris Lynam, my name, .co, and that should be ready to go by the book launch, which is going to be February 15th. And in the meantime, there's a group on Facebook called the Choreography of Customer Service, where we share all sorts of great, motivating tips for, frontline employees all the way up to business owners, HR directors, you name it. It's a nice cross section of different people, and we have great conversation there, and do some, post some fun memes and then snippets from the book, and so those would probably be the best 2 spots.
All right. Chris Lynam, author of The Choreography of Customer Service, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Thanks so much, Ed.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice. for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.